Claire Nolan's hands didn't shake as she signed the divorce papers, but they trembled when she tore up the pregnancy test moments later. The bathroom tiles were cold beneath her knees, the shredded plastic scattering like confetti for a celebration that would never happen. Her husband had made his choice. Her sister had made hers too. Now Claire would make one that would cut everything clean. She would disappear. What she didn't know was that walking away from one betrayal would deliver her straight into the hands of a man far more dangerous, and that 5 years later, her daughter's illness would drag every buried secret back into the light. Before we begin Claire's story, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop a comment below telling me what city you're tuning in from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you're ready for a tale of secrets, survival, and second chances, hit that like button and settle in, because this one's going to break your heart before it puts it back together. The law office smelled like furniture polish and broken promises. Claire Nolan sat across from her husband, ex-husband, she corrected herself, and watched him sign his name with the same careless flourish he'd used on their marriage certificate 3 years earlier. David's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman in a charcoal suit, slid the papers across the mahogany table with practiced efficiency. "Initial here, here, and here," the lawyer said, her tone bored. This was just another Tuesday for her. Another marriage reduced to paperwork. David didn't look at Claire. He hadn't really looked at her in months, not since she'd walked in on him with Jessica in their bedroom. Not since she'd realized the affair had been going on for over a year. Not since she'd understood that her own sister had been the one to unlock the door that afternoon, knowing exactly what Claire would find. "Sign here, Mrs. Nolan," her own lawyer prompted gently. Claire picked up the pen. Her hand was steady. She'd cried all her tears weeks ago, in the shower where David couldn't hear her, in her car before walking into work, in the dark hours before dawn, when sleep refused to come. Now there was just a hollow space where her heart used to be, and a grim determination to survive this with whatever dignity she had left. She signed, Claire Elizabeth Nolan, soon to be Claire Elizabeth Carter again. Back to her maiden name. Back to being alone. "That's everything," David's lawyer said, gathering the documents with brisk efficiency. "The house goes to Mr. Nolan, as agreed. Mrs. Nolan receives her personal possessions and half the savings account, minus legal fees. No alimony, no further claims." Claire had agreed to all of it. She didn't want the house, not when every room held memories of a marriage that had been a lie. She didn't want his money, she just wanted out. David stood first, buttoning his jacket. For a moment his eyes flickered toward her, and she saw something that might have been regret, or perhaps just relief that she hadn't fought him harder. "Claire," he started. "Don't," she said quietly. "Just don't." He nodded and left without another word. His lawyer followed, heels clicking against hardwood like a countdown to freedom. Claire's lawyer, an older woman named Margaret who'd handled her parents' estate years ago, reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're going to be fine, sweetheart. Better than fine. You're going to be free." But Claire wasn't thinking about freedom. She was thinking about the pregnancy test she'd taken that morning, hidden in the bottom of her purse. She was thinking about the 2 pink lines that had appeared while she'd knelt on her bathroom floor, gripping the edge of the sink. She was thinking about the choice she'd already made. "Thank you, Margaret," Claire said, gathering her things. "For everything. Call me if you need anything. Anything at all." Claire nodded, but she knew she wouldn't call. She wouldn't call anyone. What she was about to do, she would do alone. Bako. The pharmacy was 3 blocks from her apartment, the small studio she'd moved into after leaving the house. Claire walked there in the fading afternoon light, autumn leaves crunching beneath her feet. Chicago was beautiful in October, all gold and crimson and cool breezes that smelled like change. She bought a bottle of water and locked herself in the pharmacy bathroom, pulling the pregnancy test from her purse with shaking hands. She'd taken one that morning, but some desperate part of her needed confirmation, needed to know for certain before she made the decision that would alter everything. 3 minutes later, she stared at the same 2 pink lines. Pregnant. 6 weeks, maybe 7. It had to be David's. There had been no one else. Not even after she'd caught him cheating. The timeline made her stomach turn. She'd conceived their child right around the time he'd been planning his exit, right when Jessica had probably been whispering in his ear about leaving his wife. Claire's hand moved to her stomach, flat and unchanged beneath her sweater. A life growing there. A piece of David that would tie her to him forever, link her to the man who'd shattered her trust and the sister who'd helped him do it. No. The decision crystallized in that moment, sharp and clear as broken glass. She wouldn't tell him. She wouldn't give him the chance to pretend he cared, to use the baby as leverage or obligation. She wouldn't raise a child with a man who'd chosen someone else. She wouldn't bind herself to him for 18 years of custody battles and awkward exchanges. She pulled the test apart, tearing the plastic into pieces small enough to flush. The evidence disappeared down the pharmacy toilet, and with it, any connection to the future David might have expected. Claire washed her hands, dried them carefully, and walked out into the October evening with her shoulders straight and her decision made. She would handle this alone, a clinic maybe, or adoption, or she couldn't think that far ahead, not yet. First, she needed to disappear from David's life completely. She needed space to breathe, to think, to figure out what kind of future she could build from the wreckage of her marriage. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "Can we talk? Please?" Claire deleted it without responding. She'd deleted the last 7 messages from her sister, too. There was nothing Jessica could say that would make any of this hurt less. Nothing that would explain why she'd betrayed her own blood for a man who'd proven himself a liar. Another text came through, this one from an unknown number. "Miss Carter? This is Robert Chen from North Shore Medical Center. We have your test results from last week's blood work. Could you call us at your earliest convenience?" Claire frowned. She'd had routine blood work done at her annual physical 2 weeks ago, before everything had fallen apart. She'd forgotten all about it. She called the number, expecting nothing more than the usual, "Everything's fine, see you next year." "Miss Carter," Dr. Chen's voice was professionally neutral. "Thank you for calling back. I wanted to discuss some abnormalities we found in your blood panel." Claire's heart stuttered. "Abnormalities?" "Nothing immediately concerning, but I'd like to run additional tests. Some of your markers suggest possible autoimmune activity. Have you been experiencing any unusual symptoms? Fatigue? Joint pain, unexplained bruising?" She thought about the exhaustion she'd attributed to stress, the way her hands had been aching lately. "Some fatigue, but I thought, I've been going through a difficult time." "Stress can certainly exacerbate underlying conditions. I'd like to schedule you for a follow-up next week. We'll run a more comprehensive panel, just to be safe." Safe. Nothing about her life felt safe anymore. "Okay," Claire agreed, because what else could she do? "Next week. Next." She ended the call and stood on the sidewalk, watching traffic flow past. Divorced, possibly pregnant, potentially sick. The hits just kept coming. Her phone rang. Not a text this time, but an actual call. Jessica's name lit up the screen. Claire almost ignored it, almost kept walking. But something made her answer, maybe the same self-destructive impulse that had made her go home early that day, that had made her open the bedroom door, that had made her see the truth she'd been avoiding for months. "What?" Claire said flatly. "Claire, please, I need to talk to you. It's important." "I can't imagine what you and I have to talk about, Jessica. I made a mistake. I know I did. But there's something you need to know about David, about his business. You're in danger." Claire laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. "I'm in danger? From what? His lies?" "Too late. I already found those." "Not lies. Real danger. Claire, he's involved with people, bad people. I only found out after you left, and I've been trying to reach you." "Stop." Claire's voice cut through her sister's rambling. "I don't care. I don't care what David's involved in, who he's working with, or what trouble he's gotten himself into. That's not my problem anymore. We're divorced. As of 4 hours ago, I have nothing to do with him." "But they might not know that. Claire, these men, they know about you. They know where you live. I think they're going to try to use you to get to David, and you need protection." "From who? You?" Claire's laugh was ugly now. "You slept with my husband, Jessica. You helped him cheat on me, and now you want me to believe you're trying to protect me?" "I'm trying to make it right. Claire, please, just listen." "No, I'm done listening to you. I'm done with all of it. Don't call me again." Claire hung up and blocked the number immediately. Then she blocked David's number too, and the numbers of 3 mutual friends who'd been sending her concerned messages she'd been ignoring. She blocked her way to isolation, one contact at a time, until her phone felt lighter in her hand. The apartment was dark when she got home. She didn't bother turning on the lights. She just collapsed onto the couch and stared at the ceiling, trying to process everything that had happened in the span of a single day. Divorced, free, alone, pregnant maybe, sick possibly, in danger according to Jessica's desperate call. She didn't believe the danger part. Jessica was dramatic on her best days, and this reeked of manufactured crisis. David was a real estate developer with a gambling problem and a wandering eye, not some kind of criminal. Whatever Jessica thought she knew, it was probably exaggerated. Claire's hand moved to her stomach again, that unconscious protective gesture she'd already started making. What would she do? She had savings, not much, but enough to start over somewhere. She could leave Chicago entirely, find a small town where nobody knew her name or her history. She could raise this baby alone if she decided to keep it. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. A knock at the door shattered her thoughts. Claire froze. It was nearly 8 o'clock. She wasn't expecting anyone. The knock came again, louder this time, more insistent. "Claire, open the door!" Jessica's voice, muffled but urgent. "Go away," Claire called. "Claire, please, they're coming. You need to leave right now. Stop being dramatic and leave me alone. I'm not being dramatic. There are men watching your building. Claire, I'm serious. You're in—" The sound of footsteps in the hallway cut Jessica off. Heavy footsteps. Multiple people. Claire stood slowly, her heart beginning to race. Through the peephole, she could see Jessica's face, pale and frightened. And behind her, 3 large men in dark clothing, advancing down the narrow corridor. "Claire, run!" Jessica screamed. "Don't open the—" The door shook with a tremendous impact. Not a knock this time, a kick. The frame splintered. Claire stumbled backward, her mind refusing to process what was happening. This wasn't real. This was some nightmare version of her already terrible day. The door burst open. Jessica fell forward, knocked aside by one of the men. She hit the hallway wall hard and slid down, dazed. Claire ran. She didn't think, didn't plan, just turned and sprinted for the apartment's back window that opened onto the fire escape. Behind her, she heard heavy footfalls, angry voices in a language she didn't recognize. Her hands fumbled with the window lock. It stuck. It always stuck. And she'd been meaning to fix it, and now she was going to die because of a stubborn window lock. It gave. She shoved the window up and climbed through, nearly falling 3 stories before her hands caught the fire escape railing. Below, the alley was dark and empty. Above, she could hear the men searching her apartment, destroying her fragile sanctuary. Claire climbed down, her breath coming in gasps, her mind a white noise of terror. When her feet hit the alley pavement, she ran without looking back, her entire world reduced to the simple imperative, survive. She burst onto the main street, nearly getting hit by a taxi. The driver laid on the horn, shouting curses. Claire didn't stop. She ran past closed shops and startled pedestrians, her lungs burning, her vision blurring with tears and panic. A hand caught her arm and pulled her into a doorway so suddenly she almost screamed. "Don't," a male voice said quietly. "They're right behind you." Claire looked up into dark eyes set in a face that was all hard angles and controlled calm. The man was tall, well-dressed in a way that spoke of money and power, and he held her with a grip that was firm but not painful. "Who?" she started. "Quiet!" His eyes tracked something over her shoulder. There. Claire twisted to look. The 3 men from her apartment were on the street now, scanning the crowd with predatory focus. One of them pointed in her direction. "Come with me," the stranger said. "Now." "I don't know you. You don't know them either, but they just broke into your home. So you can trust me for the next 5 minutes, or you can go back out there and see what they want. Your choice." It wasn't really a choice. Claire let him pull her deeper into the doorway, through a door she hadn't noticed, into a building that smelled like expensive cologne and old wood. A restaurant, she realized. An upscale Italian place she'd walked past 100 times but never entered. The man guided her through the main dining room, past startled waiters and curious diners, into a back hallway that led to a private room. He closed the door behind them and locked it. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a leather chair. Claire sat because her legs were shaking too badly to keep standing. Who are you? Marco DeLuca. He moved to the small bar in the corner and poured something amber into a glass. Drink this. I don't... You're in shock. Drink. She took the glass with trembling hands and sipped. Whiskey, smooth and expensive, burning all the way down. It helped, a little. Enough that she could breathe again. Marco pulled out his phone and made a call. Vincent, I need a car out back in 5 minutes. And find out who sent 3 of Petrov's men to an apartment on Addison Street tonight. Yes, now. He ended the call and looked at Claire with an expression that might have been concern if his face weren't so carefully controlled. Are you hurt? He asked. No, I don't think so. What's happening? Who were those men? Why did they come after me? That's what I'm trying to find out. But I'm going to guess it has something to do with David Nolan. Claire's blood went cold. How do you know my husband? Ex-husband, as of this afternoon. Congratulations on your freedom. His tone was dry. And I know David because he owes money to some very dangerous people. People who don't take kindly to being cheated. David's a real estate developer. He gambles, but he's not... He would. He did. And now those people think you might be useful leverage to get their money back. Marco studied her with eyes that missed nothing. Your sister tried to warn you. She may have betrayed you with your husband, but she didn't want you dead. How do you know about Jessica? How do you know any of this? Marco's smile was thin. I know a lot of things, Claire. It's my business to know. And right now, what I know is that you're in serious danger from people who won't hesitate to hurt you. So you have 2 choices. You can walk out that door and try to handle this yourself, or you can let me help you. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. I don't like seeing innocent people caught in the crossfire of other men's mistakes, and I particularly don't like Dmitry Petrov thinking he can operate in my city without consequences. Marco's expression hardened. Consider this professional courtesy. Claire's head was spinning. Your city? Who are you? Someone who can keep you safe until we figure out how to resolve this situation. That's all you need to know right now. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mr. DeLuca, the car's ready. Marco stood, buttoning his jacket. We're leaving. My people will take you somewhere secure while I handle this. I'm not going anywhere with you. Claire stood too, though her legs still felt unsteady. I don't know you. For all I know, you're working with those men. If I were working with them, you'd already be in their hands. Think, Claire. Use that intelligent mind of yours. He moved toward the door. Those men will be watching your apartment. They'll be watching your friends' homes, your workplace, anywhere they think you might run. In about 12 hours, David will be dead, and they'll decide you're no longer useful. So you can trust me for one night, or you can take your chances out there. But decide quickly, because we're running out of time. Claire's hand went to her stomach again, that protective gesture she couldn't seem to stop. There was a life inside her, maybe. A future that deserved better than being collateral damage in David's catastrophically bad decisions. One night, she said finally, and then I want answers. All of them. Marco's smile was approving. Smart girl, come on. He led her through the restaurant's back entrance to a waiting black car. The driver was a large man with watchful eyes who nodded respectfully at Marco and opened the rear door for Claire. She hesitated at the threshold, every instinct screaming that she was making a terrible mistake. But behind her was chaos and violence and men who wanted to use her. Ahead was a stranger who'd already saved her once, whose calm authority suggested he was exactly as dangerous as the situation required. Claire got in the car. Marco slid in beside her, and the driver pulled away from the curb with smooth efficiency. Through the tinted windows, Claire watched her neighborhood slip past. The coffee shop where she bought her morning latte, the dry cleaner who knew her by name, the park where she sometimes sat on her lunch break. Her ordinary life, disappearing behind her. Where are we going? She asked quietly. Somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't think to look. Marco was typing something on his phone, his fingers moving quickly. I have a property outside the city. Secure. Private. You'll stay there tonight. And then what? And then I figure out how to resolve your problem without it following you for the rest of your life. Claire turned to look at him fully for the first time. In the dim light of the car, his face was all shadows and sharp edges, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he meant what he said, or at least that he believed he could deliver on the promise. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked. "People don't just help strangers for no reason." Marco's smile was slight. "Maybe I have my reasons. Or maybe I just don't like bullies. Does it matter?" "It might." "Then here's the truth. David Nolan made the mistake of thinking he could cheat Dmitry Petrov and get away with it. Petrov decided to send a message by going after David's wife. But Petrov operates in Chicago without my permission, and I don't appreciate him creating chaos in my territory. So helping you serves my interests as well as yours. Is that honest enough?" "Too honest, maybe." Claire processed his words slowly, understanding dawning like cold water. "You're a criminal. I'm a businessman with complicated interests. There's a difference." "Is there?" "You're alive, aren't you? Those men would have taken you somewhere very unpleasant and done things that would have made you wish you were dead. Instead, you're in a comfortable car heading towards safety. So yes, Claire, there's a difference." She couldn't argue with that logic, as much as she wanted to. She turned back to the window, watching the city give way to suburbs, then to countryside. The drive took almost an hour, long enough for exhaustion to creep in around the edges of her adrenaline. Finally, the car turned down a long private drive lined with old oak trees. At the end sat a house, more of an estate, really, all stone and glass and careful lighting that made it look like something from a magazine. "This is yours?" Claire asked, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. "One of several properties. Come on." The driver opened her door. Claire stepped out into cool night air that smelled like pine and autumn leaves. So different from the city, so quiet. Marco led her inside through rooms furnished with obvious money but surprising taste. Nothing ostentatious, nothing that screamed wealth, just quality and comfort. "The guest room is upstairs, second door on the right," he said. "There's a bathroom attached. My housekeeper keeps the place stocked, so you'll find everything you need. Tomorrow, we'll figure out next steps." "What about tonight? What are you going to do?" "I'm going to make some calls, have some conversations, resolve your problem." He loosened his tie, and for the first time since she'd met him, looked almost tired. "Try to get some sleep, Claire. You're safe here." "How can you be sure?" "Because anyone who wants to hurt you would have to go through me first. And I promise you, that's not a fight they want." There was something in his voice, not arrogance, but absolute certainty, that made her believe him. This man had killed before, would kill again if he deemed it necessary. The knowledge should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel safer than she'd felt in months. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for helping me." Marco's expression softened slightly. "You're welcome. Now go rest. Tomorrow is going to be complicated." Claire climbed the stairs slowly, her body finally acknowledging the trauma of the evening. The guest room was beautiful, all soft grays and whites, with a bed that looked like a cloud. The attached bathroom had a shower with multiple jets and towels so thick and soft she wanted to cry. She locked the door, then checked it twice. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself shake. She'd been attacked in her own home, chased through the streets, rescued by a stranger who'd admitted to being a criminal. And somewhere in Chicago, her ex-husband was probably about to die because of debts she'd known nothing about. Her whole world had gone insane in the span of hours. Claire pulled out her phone, thinking to call. Who? Margaret, her lawyer, the police? What would she even say? "Hi, some mobsters tried to kidnap me, so now I'm staying with a different mobster who promises he's one of the good guys." She opened her text messages and found one last message from Jessica, sent right before the men had broken down her door. "I'm so sorry. For everything. I love you. Please be safe." Claire deleted it. She deleted Jessica's contact entirely. Then she turned off her phone and dropped it on the nightstand like it had burned her. Alone in the beautiful room, in the house of a dangerous stranger, Claire finally let herself cry. Not for David, who'd proven himself unworthy of her tears. Not even for Jessica, whose betrayal had cut deeper than any affair. She cried for herself, for the life she'd lost, for the future she'd imagined that would never exist, for the woman she'd been when she'd woken up that morning, still innocent enough to think divorce was the worst thing that could happen to her. That woman was gone now. Claire didn't know who she would be tomorrow, She only knew that she had to survive the night first, had to make it to dawn, and then through the day after that, and the day after that. She changed into a t-shirt she found in the dresser, men's, probably Marco's, soft from washing, and climbed into bed. The sheets smelled like lavender and something else, something crisp and clean that reminded her of safety. Sleep came eventually, fitful and full of dreams where she ran forever down dark alleys, chased by shadows that never quite caught her. Boom. Downstairs, Marco DeLuca poured himself another whiskey and stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows at his dark property. Somewhere in the house above him, Claire Carter was trying to sleep. The woman whose life had imploded in a single day. The woman he'd saved on impulse for reasons he hadn't fully examined. She was beautiful, even terrified and disheveled. Dark hair, intelligent eyes, a spine of steel hidden beneath obvious fear. She'd run from danger without hesitation, climbed down a fire escape 3 stories up, and made the rational choice to accept help from a stranger when cornered. Smart, brave, broken. Exactly the kind of woman Marco usually avoided, because broken things required care he didn't have time to give, but there was something about her that had made him step in. Something beyond professional courtesy or territorial pride. When he'd seen her running down that street, pure terror on her face, something in his chest had tightened with unexpected protectiveness. He'd wanted to hurt the men chasing her, not just stop them, hurt them. Marco took a long drink and acknowledged the complication Claire Carter represented. She was David Nolan's ex-wife, which made her a liability. She was innocent, which made her dangerous to his carefully maintained neutrality. She was vulnerable, which made her a temptation he couldn't afford. But she was also his now, at least for tonight, under his protection, in his home, and Marco DeLuca protected what was his. His phone buzzed. Vincent. Found David Nolan. He's at his girlfriend's place on the north side. Petrov's men are waiting for him outside. How many? 4. They're not being subtle about it. Marco considered. Let them take him, but make sure it's clean. No civilian casualties. You're not going to stop it? David Nolan made his bed, but tell our people to document everything. If Petrov steps out of line, I want evidence. And the girl? Marco glanced up at the darkened second floor. She stays here until it's safe, however long that takes. Boss, getting involved with Nolan's ex-wife, that's going to send a message. Good. Let it send a message. Petrov doesn't operate in my city without permission. He needs to be reminded of that. And if he doesn't take the reminder well? Then we'll have a different conversation, a more permanent one. Marco ended the call and drained his glass. Tomorrow Claire would have questions. She'd want to know what happened to David, what happened to the men who'd chased her, what happened next. He'd tell her most of the truth. Not all, she couldn't handle all of it, but enough to help her understand the new reality she'd stumbled into. And then he'd let her go. Send her somewhere safe, somewhere far from Chicago and Petrov and the mess her ex-husband had created. Give her money to start over, a new name if she wanted it, whatever she needed to rebuild. That was the plan, the smart play, the professional choice. So why did the thought of sending her away make his jaw tighten with something that felt dangerously close to reluctance? Marco poured another whiskey and admitted what he'd been avoiding since the moment he'd pulled her into that doorway. Claire Carter was already under his skin, and letting her leave was going to be harder than it should be. But he'd do it anyway, because broken things deserved better than the kind of life he could offer, even if keeping her felt like the first right thing he'd done in years. Dawn came too early, pale light filtering through curtains Claire didn't remember closing. For one blessed moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. The divorce papers, the pregnancy test, the men breaking down her door, Marco DeLuca's dark eyes and dangerous promises. She sat up slowly, her body aching from tension she'd carried through the night. The guest room looked different in daylight, less like a sanctuary and more like what it was, a beautiful cage in a stranger's house. Her phone sat on the nightstand where she'd left it, still powered off. Claire stared at it for a long moment before turning it back on. The screen lit up with a flood of notifications, 17 missed calls, 32 text messages. She scrolled through them with growing dread. 3 calls from Margaret, her lawyer, 5 from unknown numbers. The rest from Jessica, each message more desperate than the last. Claire, please answer. They took David. He's dead. Oh God. Claire, he's dead and it's my fault. Please tell me you're safe. I need to know you're alive. Claire's hands started shaking. David was dead. Her ex-husband, the man she'd loved enough to marry, the father of the child she might be carrying, dead because of debts and danger she'd known nothing about. She should feel something. Grief, maybe. Horror. Instead, there was just numbness and a terrible sense of inevitability. David had made his choices. Those choices had consequences. She'd just never imagined the consequences would be fatal. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Claire, are you awake? Marco's voice, calm and controlled even through the door. She pulled the borrowed t-shirt down and opened the door. Marco stood in the hallway, dressed in different clothes than last night, dark slacks and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked refreshed, unbothered, like he hadn't spent the night orchestrating whatever had happened in Chicago. David's dead, Claire said without preamble. Marco's expression didn't change. I know. I'm sorry. Are you? Sorry? That you're caught up in this? Yes, that David Nolan won't hurt anyone else? No. The honesty was brutal. Claire almost appreciated it. Did you kill him? No, Petrov's men did. Around 3 this morning. It was quick. Marco studied her face. You loved him once. It's okay to grieve that, even after everything he did. I don't know what I feel. Claire wrapped her arms around herself. How do you know what happened? How do you know it was quick? Because I had people watching, making sure it didn't turn into something messier. He gestured down the hallway. Come downstairs. We need to talk, and you should eat something first. Claire followed him through the house, noticing details she'd missed in last night's panic. Hardwood floors that gleamed in the morning light. Art on the walls that looked expensive and carefully chosen. Windows that overlooked grounds so extensive she couldn't see where the property ended. The kitchen was all marble and stainless steel, professional grade but warm somehow. A woman in her 60s stood at the stove, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. Mrs. Chen, this is Claire. She's our guest. Marco pulled out a chair at the island. Claire, this is my housekeeper. She makes the best eggs you'll ever have. Mrs. Chen smiled, her eyes kind. Scrambled or over easy, dear? Scrambled, thank you. Claire sat, feeling surreal. Yesterday she'd signed divorce papers. Last night she'd fled from men who wanted to hurt her. This morning she was having breakfast with a mobster and his grandmother-like housekeeper. Mrs. Chen set a plate in front of her, perfectly scrambled eggs, crispy bacon, toast with butter melting into it. The smell made Claire's stomach growl despite everything. Eat, Marco said, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. Then we'll talk about what happens next. Claire picked up her fork mechanically. The eggs were incredible, creamy and rich. She ate without tasting, fueling her body while her mind raced. Marco waited until she'd finished half the plate before speaking. David owed Dmitry Petrov $300,000, money from a real estate deal that went bad. David promised to pay it back, then disappeared with the funds instead. Petrov doesn't forgive debt. Why didn't David just tell me? We could have, worked something out. Because by the time you would have found out, the debt had grown to $500,000 with interest. And because David was using that money to set up a new life with your sister. He wasn't planning to pay Petrov back at all. The bacon turned to ash in Claire's mouth. Jessica knew? Not at first. But she found out about 2 weeks ago. That's when she started trying to warn you. A little late for warnings. Claire pushed the plate away, her appetite gone. What about me? Am I still in danger? Marco leaned against the counter, coffee mug cradled in his hands. That depends. Petrov thinks you might know where David hid the money. Do you? I don't even know what money you're talking about. David and I kept separate accounts after... She stopped. After she'd caught him cheating. After she'd started preparing for divorce. I have no idea what he did with $500,000. I believe you. The question is whether Petrov will. Can't you just tell him I don't know anything? I could, but Petrov doesn't trust easily, and he's going to want proof, which means he'll want to question you himself. Marco's eyes met hers. I won't let that happen. There was steel in his voice, a promise that sounded dangerously close to protection. Claire didn't know how to feel about that. She'd spent one night under this man's roof. That didn't make them allies. It certainly didn't make them friends. So what do I do? Hide here forever? You disappear. Not forever, just long enough for Petrov to lose interest. I'll handle the situation with him, make it clear you're not worth pursuing. In a few months, maybe 6, you can come back. Or you can start over somewhere new, your choice. Claire's hand moved to her stomach, that protective gesture becoming habit. Disappear, start over. It wasn't what she'd planned, but then nothing about the last 24 hours had been planned. Where would I go? I have properties in other cities, or I can set you up somewhere neutral, Boston maybe, or Portland, somewhere far from Chicago and Petrov's attention. You'd need a new name, new documentation. I can arrange all of that. Why? The question came out sharper than she intended. Why are you doing all this for me? You said it was professional courtesy, but this is more than that. So what do you really want? Marco set down his coffee mug with careful precision. You want the truth? I think I've earned it. Fair enough. He crossed his arms, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked almost uncomfortable. I don't like innocent people getting hurt because of other people's mistakes. My father, he stopped, jaw tight. Let's just say I learned young what it looks like when someone gets caught in crossfire they didn't deserve. So when I saw you running down that street, terrified, I made a choice. Maybe not the smart choice, but the right one. There was history in his words, old pain carefully buried. Claire recognized it because she carried her own buried pain. Your father was innocent? My father was a lot of things. Innocent wasn't one of them, but my mother was. And she paid the price for his choices. Marco's expression shuddered. That's not your burden to carry. Point is, I'm helping you because I can, and because you deserve better than what David left you with. That's the whole truth. Claire believed him. God help her, she believed every word. What if I don't want to disappear? What if I want to stay and fight? Then you'd be dead within a week. Petrov isn't someone you fight, Claire. He's someone you survive. And you? Are you someone people just survive? Marco's smile was thin. I'd like to think I'm more reasonable than Petrov, but I'm not someone you fight either. I'm someone you trust or you don't. Right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and a very ugly death. So what's it going to be? The choice wasn't really a choice. Claire knew that. She could accept Marco's help and disappear, or she could try to handle this alone and end up like David, dead in some apartment, payment for debt she'd never agreed to carry. Boston, she said quietly. I've never been to Boston. Good choice. It's beautiful in the fall. Marco pulled out his phone. I'll make arrangements. You'll leave tonight after dark. New name, new apartment, enough money to get you started. 6 months from now, you'll be free to come back or stay, whatever you want. And what do you get out of this? Peace of mind and the satisfaction of knowing Petrov doesn't get everything he wants. Marco's eyes held hers. Sometimes that's enough. Mrs. Chen had been quietly cleaning the kitchen, but now she spoke up. The girl needs clothes if she's staying the day. Should I send for something? Marco glanced at Claire, taking in the borrowed t-shirt and bare legs. What size are you? 6, medium in shirts. Claire felt heat creep up her neck. I left everything at my apartment. We can't go back there, too dangerous. Marco made a call, speaking quietly to whoever answered. When he hung up, he turned back to Claire. My assistant will bring clothes this afternoon. In the meantime, there's a library upstairs, a gym if you want to work off stress. You're free to go anywhere on the property, but don't leave the grounds. Am I a guest or a prisoner? You're someone under my protection, which means you follow my rules until you're safe. Can you do that? Claire wanted to argue, wanted to assert her independence and autonomy, but she was tired, scared, and still processing the fact that her ex-husband was dead and she was potentially carrying his child while hiding in a mobster's estate. Yes, she said finally. I can do that. Good. Marco checked his watch. I have business in the city. Vincent will be here. He's head of security. Anything you need, ask him or Mrs. Chen. I'll be back this evening to finalize your travel arrangements. He left without waiting for a response, his footsteps echoing through the house until the front door closed with quiet finality. Claire sat in the suddenly empty kitchen, feeling the weight of everything settle over her like a heavy blanket. Mrs. Chen refilled her coffee cup without asking. "He's a good man," the housekeeper said quietly. "Dangerous, yes, but good where it counts." "You've known him long?" "Since he was 15. Angry boy back then, all sharp edges and hurt. But he's grown into someone who protects people, who keeps his word." Mrs. Chen's smile was gentle. "You're safe here, dear. Whatever else you're afraid of, you don't need to fear him." Claire wanted to believe that, but she'd trusted David once and her sister, and look where that had gotten her. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. She spent the morning exploring the house, because sitting still felt impossible. The library was 2 stories of books, with a rolling ladder and leather chairs positioned near tall windows. The gym was professional grade, all new equipment and mirrors. There was a music room with a piano, a home theater, a wine cellar that probably cost more than her yearly salary. Marco DeLuca lived well. Very well. Whatever his business was, it clearly paid. Claire found herself back in the library, running her fingers along book spines without really seeing them. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, another message from Jessica. "Please, Claire, I know you hate me. I hate myself. But I need to know you're alive. Just one word. Please." Against her better judgment, Claire typed a response. "I'm alive. Don't contact me again." Jessica's reply came within seconds. "Thank God. Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm safe. That's all you need to know. The police came to my apartment. They're asking about David. About you. I didn't tell them anything but Claire. They think you might have been involved." Claire's blood ran cold. "Involved in what?" "In his death. They found your fingerprints at his girlfriend's apartment. They know you filed for divorce yesterday. They think maybe you—" The phone slipped from Claire's hands, clattering on the hardwood floor. "The police thought she'd killed David. Of course they did. Scorned wife, fresh divorce, fingerprints at the scene. It was circumstantial but compelling, and she had no alibi for last night that didn't involve admitting she was with Marco DeLuca, a mobster who'd probably known exactly when and how David was going to die." Oh God, what had she walked into? Claire's breathing came faster, panic rising like a tide. She'd thought she was being protected. What if she was being framed? What if Marco had saved her not out of kindness, but because he needed a convenient scapegoat for murder? "Ms. Carter?" She spun around. A large man in a dark suit stood in the library doorway. Vincent, presumably. He had the build of someone who broke things for a living, but his expression was professionally neutral. "Mr. DeLuca asked me to check on you. Are you all right? I need to speak to him, now." "He's in a meeting, but I can have him call you when he's—" "Now," Claire repeated, her voice shaking. "Tell him the police think I killed David. Tell him I need to know what the hell is going on, right now." Vincent's expression shifted slightly, something like concern crossing his features. He pulled out his phone and stepped into the hallway. Claire heard low voices, then Vincent returned. "He's coming back, 30 minutes. It was the longest 30 minutes of Claire's life. She paced the library like a caged animal, scenarios spinning through her mind, each one worse than the last. By the time she heard the front door open, she'd convinced herself Marco had set her up from the beginning. He found her in the library, still wearing his business clothes, his expression unreadable. "Explain," Claire said before he could speak. "Explain why the police think I killed David." Marco closed the library door behind him. "Because someone made sure they would. My guess is Petrov, creating chaos to cover his tracks. My fingerprints are at the crime scene, at his girlfriend's apartment. How is that possible? I haven't been to that apartment in months." "When did you last see David? Before yesterday?" Claire thought back. 2 weeks ago, we met at a coffee shop to discuss the divorce settlement." "Did you touch anything? His phone, his keys, a pen?" "His pen. I borrowed it to make notes." The realization hit her. "They lifted my prints." "Probably. Not difficult if you know what you're doing. They transferred them to something at the apartment, made sure the police would find them. Now you're a suspect, which gives Petrov leverage. He can offer to clear your name in exchange for information about David's missing money." But I don't have any information. I know that. He doesn't. Or maybe he does and doesn't care. Either way, it's leverage. Marco moved closer, and Claire fought the urge to back away. This is why you need to disappear, Claire. Not in 6 months. Tonight. The police will want to question you. If you're not here, they can't. Running makes me look guilty. Staying makes you vulnerable. And potentially dead. His voice was hard now, brooking no argument. This isn't a debate. You're leaving tonight as planned. I'll handle the police, and I'll handle Petrov. Your job is to stay alive. By running away and letting everyone think I'm a murderer? By staying alive long enough for me to prove you're not. Do you trust me? The question hung between them. Did she trust him? This man she'd known for less than 24 hours, who'd saved her life but might have his own agenda, who spoke of murder and police and leverage like they were ordinary business concerns. I don't know, Claire admitted. I don't know anything anymore. Marco's expression softened slightly. That's fair, but here's what I know. You're innocent. David's death was unfortunate but inevitable. He crossed the wrong people. Your sister tried to help you, too late but genuinely. And right now the best chance you have at a normal life is letting me get you out of Chicago before this gets worse. Can you trust that much? Claire wanted to say no, wanted to call the police herself, explain everything, throw herself on the mercy of the legal system. But she knew how this looked, knew that innocent people went to prison all the time because circumstantial evidence was compelling and juries wanted someone to blame. And there was the baby. Maybe. Possibly. She still didn't know for certain, but she couldn't risk it. Couldn't risk going to jail pregnant, giving birth in custody, losing a child before she'd even decided if she wanted to keep it. Okay, she said quietly. I'll go tonight. But I want answers, Marco. Real answers. About who you are, what you do, why you're really helping me. All of it. You'll have them. On the drive to Boston, I'll tell you everything you want to know. He pulled out his phone. I'm moving up the timeline. You leave in 2 hours. Pack light. My assistant brought clothes. They're in your room. Bring nothing that can be traced back to you. I don't have anything. Everything I owned was in my apartment. Good. Easier that way. Marco headed for the door, then paused. Claire, you're doing the right thing. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you are. After he left, Claire climbed the stairs on shaking legs. In the guest room, she found shopping bags from expensive stores, jeans that actually fit, soft sweaters, practical shoes, even toiletries and makeup. Marco's assistant had good taste and better instincts. Claire changed into jeans and a dark sweater, pulling her hair back into a ponytail. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Pale, frightened, running from a life that had imploded. Her phone buzzed again. Not Jessica this time. Margaret, her lawyer. Claire, the police contacted me. They want to talk to you about David. Call me before you speak to them. This is important. Claire deleted the message. She couldn't call Margaret back, couldn't explain where she was or what she was doing. Couldn't drag her lawyer into this mess. She turned off the phone completely and left it on the nightstand. Wherever she was going, Claire Carter couldn't follow. That woman was a suspect in a murder investigation, tied to a dead man and a dangerous debt. The woman who walked down those stairs 2 hours later would be someone else entirely. Marco was waiting in the foyer with Vincent and a woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and efficient movements. This is Angela, Marco said. She'll be traveling with you to Boston, getting you settled. Angela, this is Emma, the woman supplied. Emma Ross, recently relocated from Seattle for a fresh start. That's your story, and here are your documents. She handed Claire a folder. Driver's license, social security card, bank statements for the account we just opened in your name. Memorize the details during the drive. Claire opened the folder with trembling hands. The driver's license showed her face, but a different name, a different birth date. Emma Jane Ross, born April 15, 1993 in Seattle, Washington. This is illegal, she said faintly. This is survival, Marco corrected. Your real identity stays buried until it's safe to resurface. 6 months, maybe less if I can resolve things faster. Can you do this? Claire looked at the documents, at the stranger's life she was supposed to inhabit. Then she looked at Marco, at the certainty in his eyes that this was the only way. I can do this, she said, and hoped it was true. The drive to Boston took 8 hours. Angela drove in silence for the first two, letting Claire process. Then, as promised, Marco called. You wanted answers. His voice came through the car's speakers. Ask. Who are you, really? Marco DeLuca, 34 years old. I run various businesses in Chicago, restaurants, real estate, import-export. Some of those businesses are legitimate, some aren't. I keep the city peaceful by mediating between people like Petrov and people who want Petrov gone. It's a careful balance. You're a criminal. I operate in gray areas. I don't hurt innocent people. I don't deal in drugs or human trafficking. I don't prey on the weak. But yes, by most legal definitions, I'm a criminal. And you're helping me because you remind me of my mother, not in looks, but in circumstances. She was caught between my father's choices and his enemies. She didn't deserve what happened to her. Neither do you. What happened to her? A pause. She died when I was 15. Collateral damage in someone else's war. I decided that day that if I ever had power, I'd use it to protect people like her. People who just wanted to live quiet lives but got dragged into chaos. So that's what I do, when I can. Claire absorbed this, the loss in his voice making him suddenly human in a way she hadn't expected. I'm sorry about your mother. Ancient history, but it's why I do what I do. Another pause. Your turn. Why did you really leave David? The affair was bad, but there's more. Claire hadn't expected the question to hurt, but it did. He stopped seeing me, not just physically, emotionally. I became furniture in our marriage, something useful but not important. The affair was just confirmation of what I already knew. I'd never been enough for him. He was a fool. He was human. People fall out of love. No, Marco said firmly. People make choices. He chose to betray you instead of being honest. He chose your sister instead of honoring his vows. Those were his choices, Claire, not your failures. The words hit something deep and wounded inside her. Claire felt tears sting her eyes and blinked them away furiously. Thank you for saying that. I mean it. David Nolan was a fool who didn't deserve you. Remember that when you're tempted to blame yourself. They talked for another hour, about Chicago, about Boston, about the logistics of her new life. Marco had arranged an apartment, a job at a small bookstore whose owner owed him a favor, even a bank account with enough money to live on for months. I'll pay you back, Claire insisted. Consider it an investment in justice. Or don't think about it at all. Just focus on building a life as Emma Ross. When the call ended, Claire felt steadier. Not safe. She might never feel truly safe again. But steadier. Like maybe she could survive this. They reached Boston just after midnight. The apartment was in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but clean and secure. Angela helped her unpack the few belongings she'd brought, showed her how the locks worked, left emergency contact numbers. Marco's people will check on you periodically, Angela said at the door. You won't see them, but they'll be around. If you need anything, call the number he gave you. And Emma, try to build a real life here. Don't just exist waiting to go back. Actually live. Then she was gone. And Claire, Emma, was alone in a strange apartment in a strange city with a stranger's name and a future full of uncertainties. She stood at the window, looking out at Boston's nighttime skyline, and let herself finally feel the weight of everything she'd lost. Her marriage, her home, her identity. Maybe a child she hadn't decided whether to keep, but she was alive. And tomorrow she would wake up as Emma Ross and figure out how to keep living. That would have to be enough. 5 years passed like water through fingers, sometimes slow, sometimes rushing, but always moving forward. Emma Ross became real in ways Claire Carter had never managed. She woke early to open the bookstore, learned the names of regular customers, planted herbs in window boxes that actually grew. She found a pediatrician when the pregnancy test came back positive 3 weeks after arriving in Boston, found a small hospital where she gave birth to Lily 8 months later, found a strength she hadn't known existed when she held her daughter for the first time. The money Marco had given her stretched far when combined with her bookstore salary. She lived simply, carefully, building a life that felt honest even though it was founded on lies. The name was false, the documentation manufactured, but the love she poured into her daughter was real. The books she recommended to customers were real. The friendships she cautiously built were real. Marco called once a month for the first year, checking in with professional distance. Then every other month. Then quarterly. The calls grew shorter, more perfunctory, until they stopped altogether. His people still watched. She caught glimpses sometimes, unfamiliar faces that appeared too often to be coincidence. But Marco himself faded into memory, becoming the man who'd saved her life and then let her go. Claire told herself she was grateful for the distance, that she didn't wonder about him, didn't think about those dark eyes and careful promises, that she'd moved on completely. She almost believed it. Lily grew like a wildflower, all dark curls and curious questions. She had David's eyes, but Claire's smile, and a stubbornness that belonged entirely to herself. At 2, she refused to sleep without her stuffed rabbit. At 3, she insisted on reading the same book 17 times in a row. At 4, she announced she wanted to be a dinosaur when she grew up, not a paleontologist, an actual dinosaur. Claire loved her with a ferocity that sometimes scared her. This tiny person who'd come from betrayal and loss, who represented everything complicated and painful about her past, had somehow become the best part of her present. But at 5 years old, Lily started getting sick. It began with fatigue that Claire attributed to growth spurts, then bruises that appeared too easily, lingered too long, then nosebleeds that wouldn't stop, fevers that spiked without warning. Claire took her to the pediatrician, who ran tests and referred them to a specialist, who ran more tests and delivered news that made the world tilt sideways. "Your daughter has a rare blood disorder," Dr. Singh explained in her office, her expression grave but kind. "It's affecting her bone marrow's ability to produce healthy blood cells. Without treatment, her condition will continue to deteriorate." Claire's hand found Lily's, squeezing tight. Her daughter sat beside her, swinging her legs and humming, blissfully unaware of the weight of the doctor's words. "What kind of treatment?" Claire asked, her voice steady through sheer force of will. "Transfusions in the short term to manage symptoms. But ultimately she'll need a bone marrow transplant. The best chance of finding a compatible donor is usually a biological relative, parent, sibling, extended family." Parent. The word echoed in Claire's head. Lily's father was dead, buried in Chicago under circumstances Claire had spent 5 years trying to forget. David's family had never known about Lily, would never know about her if Claire had her way. "I'll get tested," Claire said. "I'm her mother. I'll be compatible." Dr. Singh's expression suggested she already knew the answer would disappoint. "We'll test you, of course, but the odds of a parent being a perfect match are only about 25%. Do you have other family we could contact, Lily's father?" "He's dead, and I don't have other family." The lie came easily now, smooth as truth. Emma Ross had no family, no ties, no past that could complicate her daughter's future. The testing proved Dr. Singh right. Claire wasn't a match, neither were the bone marrow registries they searched desperately over the following weeks. Lily's specific genetic markers were rare enough that finding a stranger donor would be nearly impossible. "There must be someone," Claire insisted during one appointment, watching Lily color at the small table in the corner. Her daughter was getting thinner, paler, moving with the careful slowness of someone whose body hurt. "What about her father's family? Could we find them somehow?" Dr. Singh hesitated. "If we had their information, we could reach out through the hospital, explain the situation. Most people are willing to get tested when a child's life is at stake." Most people. But David's family wasn't most people. They were wealthy, powerful, and had considered Claire trailer trash even when she'd been married to their golden boy. They'd made their feelings clear at the wedding, at every family gathering afterward, in the cold silence after David's death when they'd blamed her without evidence. Still, this was Lily's life. "I need to think about it," Claire said quietly. That night, after Lily was asleep, Claire pulled out the phone she'd hidden in the back of her closet 5 years ago. The one that belonged to Claire Carter, not Emma Ross. She'd charged it once a year, just in case, but had never turned it on. Her hands shook as she powered it up. The phone buzzed with years of accumulated messages, notifications, voicemails. Claire ignored them all and pulled up the one contact she'd never deleted, Marco DeLuca. She stared at his name for a long time before typing a message. "I need help."
My daughter is sick and I don't know what else to do.
She didn't expect a response. 5 years was a lifetime in his world. He'd probably moved on, forgotten about the scared woman he'd helped escape Chicago. She was just another ghost from his past. The phone rang 30 seconds later. Claire. His voice was exactly as she remembered, calm, controlled, with an undertone of something darker. Tell me everything. So she did. Standing in her small Boston kitchen, speaking quietly so she wouldn't wake Lily, Claire explained about the blood disorder and the failed matching and the desperate need for a biological relative. She explained about David's family, about the impossibility of reaching out to them without revealing where she was and who she'd become. Marco listened without interrupting. When she finished, there was a long silence. I'll handle it, he said finally. Give me 3 days. Marco, I can't ask you to You didn't ask, I'm offering. 3 days, Claire. Keep your daughter stable, and I'll find you a donor. How? You can't just... 3 days. He hung up before she could argue. Claire stood in the darkness, phone still pressed to her ear, and felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. 2 days later, Dr. Singh called with news that made no sense. We found a match, she said, her voice bright with surprised relief. A perfect match? I don't know how this happened. The donor registry system flagged someone who wasn't in our original search pool. He's willing to donate immediately. Who is he? Claire asked, her heart hammering. The system shows him as an anonymous donor, but he's requested to meet you and Lily before the procedure. That's unusual but not unheard of. Are you comfortable with that? Claire knew, even before Dr. Singh said his name, knew with a certainty that made her knees weak. The donor's name is Marco DeLuca. Of course it was. When? Claire managed. He's flying in tomorrow. The procedure is scheduled for the day after. Ms. Ross, this is incredibly fortunate. Mr. DeLuca's markers are the best match we could have hoped for. Your daughter is very lucky. Lucky. Claire wasn't sure luck had anything to do with it. She spent the next 24 hours in a state of controlled panic. Marco was coming here, to Boston, to the life she'd built as Emma Ross, to meet the daughter whose existence he knew nothing about. A daughter who was 5 years old. A daughter conceived right before Claire had fled Chicago. A daughter who had to be his. The math was inescapable. Claire had been pregnant when she'd run, carrying a child conceived that one desperate night in Marco's estate. She'd assumed it was David's, the timeline had been close enough, and she'd been too panicked to think clearly. But David hadn't been a bone marrow match. His family wouldn't be matches either. Marco was a perfect match. Marco was Lily's father. Claire sat on the edge of her bed and tried to breathe through the realization. She'd spent 5 years raising his daughter without knowing it, building a life around a child who belonged to a man who'd let her go without question. And now he was coming here, was going to save that child's life, and Claire had no idea what happened next. The hospital room was private and expensively appointed when Claire arrived with Lily the next afternoon. Marco was already there, standing by the window in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, looking exactly as she remembered, but somehow different. Older, maybe. More settled. He turned when they entered, and his eyes went straight to Lily. The recognition was instant. Claire saw it in the way his expression froze, the way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He knew. Of course he knew. Lily had his coloring, his bone structure, even the way his eyebrow lifted when he was thinking. Mr. DeLuca, Dr. Singh said warmly, this is Emma Ross and her daughter, Lily. Ladies, this is the generous donor who's going to help make Lily better. Marco's eyes finally moved to Claire. 5 years of questions, 5 years of distance, 5 years of secrets, all of it visible in that single look. Miss Ross, he said evenly, it's good to meet you. The lie sat between them like broken glass. Thank you for doing this, Claire said, her voice barely steady, for helping my daughter. Our daughter, I think. The words were quiet, meant only for her. Dr. Singh was already kneeling beside Lily, asking her about the coloring book she'd brought. Claire's breath caught. Marco, not here. Later, after we make sure she's okay. He moved toward Lily, kneeling so he was at her eye level. Hi, Lily. I'm Marco. Lily studied him with serious dark eyes. You're going to give me your blood? Sort of. Something called bone marrow. It's going to help your body make healthy blood again. Will it hurt you? A little. But I don't mind. You're worth it. Lily considered this, then held out her stuffed rabbit. Mr. Hops is scared. Can you tell him it's okay? Marco took the rabbit with careful reverence. Mr. Hops, I promise everything's going to be fine. You're very brave for taking such good care of Lily. Watching them together, this dangerous man and her fragile daughter, Claire felt something crack open in her chest. Lily was already reaching for him, trustful in the way children were, and Marco was handling her like she was made of spun glass. Dr. Singh stood. We'll need to run a few more tests before tomorrow's procedure, but everything looks excellent. Mr. DeLuca, if you'll come with me, we'll get you prepped. Marco stood, handing Mr. Hops back to Lily. His eyes found Claire's again. I'd like to talk with Ms. Ross privately. Is there somewhere we could meet after this? There's a family consultation room down the hall. I can have someone show you. 20 minutes later, Claire found herself in that small room with Marco. The door closed, shutting out the hospital sounds, leaving them in silence that felt deafening. She's mine, Marco said. Not a question. I didn't know, Claire said quickly. I swear, Marco, I thought David and I, the timeline was close and I was so focused on running that I never… How old is she? 5. She turned 5 last month. Marco did the math in his head. You were pregnant when you left Chicago. Yes, but I didn't know for certain until I'd been here a few weeks, and by then you'd already helped me disappear, and I wanted to give her a normal life, away from all of it, away from me. The words stung because they were true. I didn't think you'd want to know. You were the man who helped me escape, not… I never imagined that I'd want to know I had a daughter. Marco's voice was hard now, anger creeping in around the edges of his control. That I might want to be part of her life? You let me go without looking back. You helped me build a new identity, and then you disappeared. What was I supposed to think? You were supposed to think I was giving you space to heal, that I was protecting you by staying away. Marco ran a hand through his hair, the first sign of agitation she'd seen from him. I called every month for a year, Claire. I had people watching to make sure you were safe. I stayed away because I thought that's what you needed, not because I didn't care. Claire felt tears burning behind her eyes. I didn't know. You never said… What was I supposed to say? Hey, I know you're building a new life, but I can't stop thinking about you? That would have been fair? The admission hung between them, raw and unexpected. You thought about me? Claire asked quietly. Marco's laugh was bitter. Every damn day. But you were free, Claire. Free from Chicago and Petrov and everything that had hurt you. I wasn't going to ruin that by dragging you back into my world. And now? Now I find out I have a 5-year-old daughter who's dying because neither of us had the courage to be honest. Marco moved to the window, his back to her. What's her full name? Lily Ann Ross, but Ross isn't… legally it is, but what would you have named her if you'd known the truth? Claire's throat tightened. I don't know. I never let myself think about it. Marco turned back to face her. After tomorrow, after the transplant, we're going to have a very long conversation about what happens next, about how we tell her the truth, about what kind of relationship I get to have with my daughter. Marco, I can't just… Yes, you can. She's my child, Claire. Mine. And I've already missed 5 years of her life because we were both too scared to be honest. I'm not missing any more. There was steel in his voice, the same absolute certainty she'd heard 5 years ago when he'd promised to keep her safe. This wasn't a request. It was a statement of fact. Okay, Claire said, because what else could she say? He was right. Lily deserved to know her father, deserved the chance to have both parents in her life, whatever that looked like. Okay, Marco echoed. Some of the tension left his shoulders. Now, tell me everything. What she likes, what she's afraid of, what makes her laugh. I want to know my daughter. So Claire told him. About Lily's obsession with dinosaurs and how she insisted on wearing mismatched socks because matching was boring. About how she sang made-up songs in the bathtub and refused to eat anything green except pickles. About her fierce loyalty to Mr. Hops and her gentleness with other children, and her absolute terror of thunderstorms. Marco listened to every word like he was memorizing scripture, and when Claire finally ran out of stories, he asked the question she'd been dreading. "Why didn't you tell me? When you found out you were pregnant, why not call?" Claire chose honesty, because he deserved at least that much. "Because I was terrified of what it would mean, of tying myself to someone I barely knew, of bringing a child into your world, and because part of me thought you'd saved me out of guilt or obligation, not because you actually cared. Telling you about the baby felt like asking for something you never offered." "I would have offered everything," Marco said quietly. "If I'd known, I would have given you everything. I know that now. But then, I was just trying to survive." Marco studied her for a long moment. "We both made mistakes. We were both protecting ourselves instead of trusting each other. But that ends now, Claire. For Lily's sake, we have to do better. I'll try. I promise, I'll try. That's all I'm asking." The door opened and Dr. Singh appeared. "Mr. DeLuca, we're ready for your final prep. The procedure is scheduled for 7 a.m. tomorrow." Marco nodded, then looked back at Claire. "I'll see you in the morning. And Claire, thank you for taking care of her, for keeping her safe all these years." The words nearly broke her. Claire managed a nod, not trusting her voice. She spent that night in Lily's hospital room, watching her daughter sleep, trying to imagine what came next. Tomorrow, Marco would donate his bone marrow. In a few weeks, Lily would start to recover. And then Claire would have to figure out how to share her daughter with a man who lived in a world she'd spent 5 years trying to forget. But Lily would be alive. That was what mattered. Everything else they'd figure out somehow. The transplant went smoothly. Marco was in surgery for 2 hours while Claire paced the waiting room, alternating between praying to a God she wasn't sure she believed in and bargaining with the universe. When Dr. Singh finally appeared, smiling, Claire nearly collapsed with relief. Both procedures were successful. Mr. DeLuca is in recovery, and Lily's received the transplant. Now we wait and watch for her body to accept the new marrow. "Can I see her?" "Soon. She's still sedated. But Ms. Ross, I want you to prepare yourself. The next few weeks will be difficult. Her immune system will be compromised while the new marrow establishes itself. She'll need to stay isolated, and even small infections could be dangerous." Claire knew the drill. They discussed it endlessly before the transplant. "I understand. When can I see Marco?" "He's asking for you, actually. Room 412. Claire found him propped up in bed, pale but alert. An IV ran into his arm, and she could see the bandages from the extraction site. "How are you feeling?" she asked from the doorway. "Like someone drilled into my hip and stole my bone marrow. But I'll live." Marco's smile was faint. "How's Lily?" "Sedated, but the transplant went perfectly. Dr. Singh says we just have to wait now." "Then we wait." He gestured to the chair beside the bed. "Sit. We should probably have that conversation now, while we're both stuck here." Claire sat, folding her hands in her lap to keep them from shaking. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. But we can start with the practical things. Where do you live? How do you support yourself? What kind of life has Emma Ross built?" So she told him about the bookstore, about her small apartment in a neighborhood where people knew each other's names, about the careful simplicity she'd cultivated. She told him about raising Lily alone, about the fear and joy of single motherhood, about learning to trust herself in ways she never had before. Marco listened without judgment, asking occasional questions, his expression thoughtful. "You did well," he said when she finished. "Better than well. You built something real. It's built on lies, though. The name, the documentation, all of it. The name's a lie. The life is real. Don't confuse the two." Marco shifted carefully, wincing. "What do you want, Claire? For yourself? For Lily? If you could have anything, what would it look like?" The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her that in 5 years. "I want Lily to grow up safe and healthy. I want her to have choices, opportunities, a future that isn't limited by my mistakes. And I want—" She stopped, surprised by the truth that wanted to surface. "What?" Marco prompted gently. "I want to stop being afraid. I've spent 5 years looking over my shoulder, waiting for my past to catch up with me. I'm tired of it." Then come back to Chicago. Claire's head snapped up. What? Come back. The threat from Petrov ended years ago. He's dead, actually. Took over too much territory and someone took exception. David's debts died with him. You're not wanted for anything. The police investigation went cold when you disappeared. There's no reason for you to keep hiding. Except that Claire Carter is dead. Emma Ross exists. I have a life here. You have a half-life built on fear. You could have a whole one. Marco's eyes held hers. I'm not asking you to come back for me. I'm asking for Lily. So she can know her father, so you don't have to raise her alone, so you can both have the protection and resources my name provides. Your dangerous world, you mean? My world is what it is, but I've spent the last 5 years making it less dangerous, consolidating power, eliminating threats, building legitimate businesses. I'm not the same man I was, Claire. And even if I were, I'd protect you both with everything I have. Claire wanted to refuse, wanted to insist that her careful Boston life was enough, that she didn't need his help or his world or the complications that came with both. But she couldn't deny the truth. Lily deserved to know her father, deserved the security and opportunities Marco could provide, deserved better than a mother constantly looking over her shoulder. I need time, she said finally, to think about it, to figure out what's best for Lily. Take all the time you need. But while you're thinking, consider this. I've waited 5 years to meet my daughter. I'm not waiting 5 more to be part of her life. Whatever you decide about Chicago, about us, I'm going to be her father. Somehow, some way. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And Claire found herself believing every word. Over the next 3 weeks, as Lily's body slowly accepted the transplant, Marco became a permanent fixture in their lives. He visited every day, bringing books and toys and an endless patience for Lily's questions. He read her stories about dinosaurs until his voice went hoarse. He held her hand through painful procedures. He learned the words to her made-up songs and pretended Mr. Hops was the wisest creature alive. And he fell completely, irrevocably in love with his daughter. Claire watched it happen with a mixture of joy and grief. Joy because Lily deserved this. Deserved a father who looked at her like she hung the moon. Grief because she'd stolen 5 years of this from both of them through fear and silence. Stop, Marco said one evening, catching her expression as she watched him help Lily with a puzzle. I can hear you blaming yourself from across the room. I kept her from you. 5 years, Marco. 5 years you can never get back. You did what you thought was right to protect her. I can't fault you for that. He glanced at Lily, who was absorbed in finding the right puzzle piece. Besides, we have now. We have every day going forward. That's what matters. Is it enough? For you? Marco met her eyes with an intensity that made her breath catch. It has to be. Because the alternative, being angry, demanding things that can't be changed, that just hurts everyone, especially her. He was right. Claire knew he was right, but the guilt still sat heavy in her chest, a constant reminder of everything she'd cost them all. Dr. Singh confirmed what they'd all been hoping for 6 weeks after the transplant. Lily's body had accepted the bone marrow. Her blood counts were improving. The danger wasn't completely past, but the prognosis had gone from grim to cautiously optimistic. She'll need to stay close to the hospital for another few months, Dr. Singh explained. Regular checkups, careful monitoring, but if this continues, she should make a full recovery. That night, Claire and Marco sat in the hospital cafeteria after Lily had fallen asleep, both exhausted and relieved. We need to tell her, Marco said quietly. About me. About us. She's strong enough now to handle the truth. Claire's coffee had gone cold in her hands. What do we say? Hi, honey. Remember the nice man who gave you his bone marrow? He's actually your father, and I've been lying about your whole life? We tell her the truth. Age-appropriately, gently, but honestly. Marco reached across the table, covering her hand with his. She deserves to know who she is, Claire, who we are. And what are we? The question hung between them, weighted with 5 years of distance and 3 months of forced proximity. Marco's thumb traced patterns on her wrist, the touch gentle but deliberate. We're her parents, he said finally. Everything else we figure out as we go. But she needs to know the truth. Can you do that? Claire thought about Lily, about her fierce intelligence and her gentle heart, about how she'd already started asking questions about why Marco visited every day, why he looked at Claire with complicated expressions, why they sometimes spoke in quiet voices when they thought she was sleeping. "Yes," Claire said, "we can do that. Together." Marco's smile was the first genuinely happy expression she'd seen from him. Together. I like the sound of that. They told Lily the next afternoon, sitting on either side of her hospital bed with Mr. Hops as witness. Claire explained gently about how sometimes adults made choices they thought were right, and how she'd made a choice 5 years ago to keep Lily safe that had meant keeping secrets. "Marco is your father," Claire said, holding Lily's small hand. "I should have told you sooner, and I'm sorry I didn't, but he loves you very much, and he's always going to be part of your life now." Lily looked between them with those serious dark eyes, processing. Then she looked at Marco. "Are you going to stay?" she asked. "Even when I'm better?" Marco's voice was rough with emotion. "Forever, if that's okay with you." Lily considered this gravely. "Will you still read me dinosaur books?" "Every single one, multiple times if you want. And you'll tell Mr. Hops bedtime stories?" "The best stories, I promise." Lily nodded, satisfied with these terms. Then she reached out her arms, and Marco gathered her close, burying his face in her dark curls. Claire saw his shoulders shake slightly and knew he was crying. Her own tears fell silently as she watched her daughter and the man who'd saved them both find each other at last. Later that night, after Lily had drifted off to sleep, Marco walked Claire to her car. The Boston night was cold, autumn turning toward winter, and Claire pulled her coat tighter against the chill. "Come back to Chicago," Marco said again. "Please, let me give you both the life you deserve." Claire looked up at him, at this complicated man who'd saved her twice now and asked for nothing in return except the chance to love his daughter. "What about us? What do we become in this scenario?" "Whatever we want, partners, friends, co-parents." His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Or something more, if you're brave enough to try." "I haven't been brave in 5 years." "You raised a child alone in a strange city with a fake name and a constant fear of discovery. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen." Marco's smile was gentle. "Come home, Claire. Let me help you be brave again." Standing in that hospital parking lot, with her daughter sleeping upstairs and her future suddenly full of possibilities instead of limitations, Claire made a choice. Not the safe choice, not the careful choice, but the right one. "Okay," she whispered. "We'll come home." Marco pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in 5 years, Claire let herself be held. Let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. The decision to return to Chicago felt both inevitable and terrifying. Claire spent the next 3 weeks finishing Lily's medical clearances while Marco made arrangements that seemed to materialize out of thin air. A house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools, enrollment at a private academy known for its excellent science program, even a position for Claire at an independent bookstore whose owner had mysteriously decided to retire early. "You're buying my life," Claire said one evening as they reviewed the paperwork Marco had brought to the hospital. Lily was doing physical therapy down the hall, regaining strength that the illness had stolen. "I'm building a foundation for our daughter's future," Marco corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're controlling everything." Marco set down the papers with careful precision. "What would you prefer? That I do nothing while you struggle to find work and housing in a city you haven't seen in 5 years? That I let you exhaust yourself trying to prove you don't need help when we both know you do?" The words stung because they were true. Claire's Boston life had been manageable for one person living simply, but returning to Chicago meant facing her past, reclaiming her real identity, and navigating a world that had moved on without her. Doing all that while caring for a recovering child would be nearly impossible without support. "I just don't want to owe you," she admitted quietly. "You don't owe me anything. But Lily deserves stability, and you deserve to not have to fight every battle alone." Marco's expression softened. "I'm not trying to control you, Claire. I'm trying to make your life easier. If that makes you uncomfortable, tell me what you need instead." Claire looked at the paperwork. The deed to a house she'd never seen. The job offer at a salary higher than anything she'd earned as Emma Ross. The school enrollment for a daughter who'd only ever known Boston. I need to feel like I have choices. Like I'm not just following your plan for my life. Then make choices. The house. Do you want to see other options? The job. Would you rather do something else? I can arrange whatever you want, Claire. Just tell me what that is. It was a fair offer, more than fair, but Claire had gotten used to making decisions alone, to being the only architect of her small life. Accepting help felt like surrendering control she'd fought hard to maintain. Can I see the house first, she asked, before I decide? Of course. I'm flying back to Chicago tomorrow to handle some business. Come with me. Lily's stable enough for a day trip, and Dr. Singh said travel would be fine as long as she's not overdoing it. The thought of returning to Chicago made Claire's stomach knot, but she nodded. Okay, tomorrow. Marco stood, gathering the papers. For what it's worth, I'm not trying to run your life. I just want to give you and Lily the safety and comfort you deserve. If I'm overstepping, tell me. I'll adjust. After he left, Claire sat in the quiet hospital room and tried to imagine what coming home would really mean. Not Emma Ross anymore, carefully invisible in her Boston neighborhood. Claire Carter again, the woman who'd disappeared 5 years ago under suspicion of murder. Would people remember? Would they care? Would the police reopen the investigation into David's death? Marco had assured her the case was cold, that no one was looking for her anymore. But trust came hard to someone who'd spent half a decade hiding. The flight to Chicago was Lily's first time on a plane. She pressed her face to the window, chattering excitedly about clouds and how small everything looked below. Marco sat beside her, patient with her endless questions, and Claire watched them from across the aisle, feeling something warm and complicated bloom in her chest. This was what she'd denied them both. These small moments of connection, the easy intimacy of parent and child. Lily deserved more of this. They all did. The car that met them at the airport was sleek and expensive, driven by the same Vincent who'd been head of security 5 years ago. He nodded respectfully at Claire, his expression carefully neutral, and she wondered what Marco had told his people about her return. The house was in Lincoln Park, a gracious Victorian painted soft gray with white trim. It had a yard, an actual yard with old oak trees and a swing set that looked brand new. The inside was furnished but not overwhelming, decorated with warm colors and comfortable furniture that somehow managed to feel both elegant and family-friendly. The previous owners moved last month, Marco explained as they walked through rooms filled with afternoon sunlight. I had it furnished based on what I thought you'd like, but everything can be changed if you hate it. Claire didn't hate it. She loved it, which made her wary. This must have cost a fortune. Money's not an issue. What matters is whether you can see yourself living here, whether Lily will be happy here. Lily had already found the swing set and was demanding to be pushed higher, her laughter carrying through the open back door. Claire watched her daughter through the kitchen window, so different from the pale, exhausted child in a hospital bed just weeks ago. She likes it, Claire said softly. What about you? Claire turned to find Marco watching her with that intense focus he had, like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve. It's beautiful. More than I expected. More than I thought I'd ever have. Then it's yours. Both of you. Marco moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. I meant what I said, Claire. I want to give you choices, not dictate your life. If you hate this house, we'll find another. If you don't want the bookstore job, we'll find something else. But please stop fighting me on the basic premise that you and Lily deserve good things. I'm not used to this, Claire admitted, to someone wanting to take care of me. After David, after everything, I learned to only rely on myself. I'm not asking you to stop relying on yourself. I'm asking you to let me stand beside you instead of behind you. Marco's hand came up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture that felt dangerously intimate. We're partners now, in raising Lily if nothing else. Partners share burdens. Let me share yours. The sincerity in his voice made Claire's throat tight. What if I mess this up? What if I can't be what you need me to be? You're already exactly what I need you to be. Lily's mother, a woman who's survived impossible circumstances, someone brave enough to start over even when it terrifies you. Marco's smile was slight. I'm not asking for perfection, Claire. I'm asking for honesty and partnership. Can you give me that? She thought about the alternative, going back to Boston alone, raising Lily without Marco's support, always wondering what might have been if she'd been brave enough to try. Thought about denying Lily the chance to really know her father, to have two parents who loved her instead of one exhausted woman doing her best. Yes, Claire said finally. I can give you that. Relief flickered across Marco's expression. Good. Then let's tell Lily this is home. They stayed in Chicago for 3 days, giving Lily time to adjust to the new house and meet the neighbors. Marco had somehow arranged for a family with a daughter Lily's age to live 2 doors down, and the two girls became instant friends over a shared obsession with dinosaurs. Claire met Jessica on the second day in a coffee shop that felt neutral enough for the confrontation she'd been dreading for 5 years. Her sister looked older, thinner, with lines of worry around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She stood when Claire entered, her expression somewhere between hope and terror. You came, Jessica said, her voice shaking slightly. Marco said you wanted to talk. Claire sat across from her, keeping the table between them like a barrier. So talk. Jessica's hands twisted around her coffee cup. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough, that it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know how sorry I am. For everything. For David. For not warning you sooner about his debts. For sleeping with my husband. Claire's voice was flat. For betraying me in every way that mattered? Yes, all of it. I was selfish and stupid, and I've regretted it every single day since. Tears slipped down Jessica's cheeks. I thought I loved him. I thought he loved me. But after you left, after David died, I realized he never loved either of us. He just used people and moved on when they stopped being useful. Claire wanted to feel satisfaction at her sister's pain, wanted the vindication of being right about David. Instead, she just felt tired. Why did you really want to see me? Because you're my sister, because I miss you, because I heard you're back in Chicago and I don't know what I wanted. Forgiveness, maybe, or just the chance to tell you I'm sorry. I can't forgive you, Claire said honestly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did broke something between us that I don't know how to fix. Jessica nodded, wiping at her eyes. I understand. I just wanted you to know that I tried, that I did try to warn you about David's danger, even if it was too late. Marco told me, you probably saved my life that night. The admission cost Claire something, but it was true. If Jessica hadn't shown up at her apartment, if she hadn't tried to warn her, Claire might not have run fast enough. I'm glad. I know I don't have the right to be glad about anything concerning you, but I am. Glad you're alive. Glad you're safe. Jessica hesitated. Marco's a good man. Better than David ever was. I hope you know that. Claire thought about Marco's patience with Lily, his careful respect for Claire's boundaries, the way he'd rearranged his life to accommodate theirs without demanding anything in return. I'm starting to. Good. You deserve someone good. Jessica stood, gathering her purse. I won't bother you again, but if you ever want to talk, ever need anything, I'm here. I'll always be here. She left before Claire could respond, and Claire sat in the coffee shop feeling strangely empty. She'd imagined this confrontation 1,000 times over the years. Imagined the things she'd say, the anger she'd unleash. Instead, there was just sadness for everything they'd both lost. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marco. How did it go? Strange. She apologized. I'm not ready to forgive her, but I listened. That's enough for now. Come home when you're ready. Lily wants to show you the treehouse. Home. The word sat strange and hopeful in Claire's mind. She texted back a simple okay and finished her coffee slowly, watching Chicago move past the windows. This city had broken her 5 years ago, but maybe it could rebuild her too. The treehouse was elaborate, clearly professionally built, with actual walls and a rope ladder that Lily was struggling to climb in her post-recovery state. Marco stood below, hands ready to catch her if she slipped, and Claire's heart seized at the casual protectiveness of the gesture. Mom, look! Lily called from the platform. There's books up here, and pillows. Marco said it can be my reading fort.
It's amazing, baby, Claire called back, then turned to Marco with raised eyebrows. A treehouse, really? She mentioned once that she'd always wanted one. I had it built while we were in Boston. Marco shrugged like this was perfectly normal. Every kid should have a reading fort. You're spoiling her. I'm making up for lost time. There's a difference. Claire couldn't argue with that logic, much as she wanted to. What happens when she expects grand gestures for everything? When normal life seems boring compared to this? Marco's expression grew serious. Then we teach her that love isn't about grand gestures. That it's about showing up every day, about being present even when it's hard, about choosing her over and over again. The treehouse is just wood and nails, Claire. What matters is that I'm here to read books in it with her. He was right, and Claire knew it, but accepting help still felt like admitting weakness, like conceding that she couldn't do this alone. Which was true. She couldn't, not anymore. But the admission stung. I need to find a job, she said abruptly. A real job that I earned, not something you arranged. The bookstore position is real. The owner was planning to sell anyway. I just made sure you had first consideration. I need to do this myself, Marco. I need something that's mine, that I built without your help. Marco studied her for a long moment. Okay, then do that. Find your own job. Make your own choices. I'll support whatever you decide. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like being lost, set adrift from the support she'd just spent days accepting. Claire wrapped her arms around herself, confused by her own contradictions. I don't know what I want, she admitted quietly. Part of me wants your help, wants to accept everything you're offering. Part of me is terrified of depending on you, of losing myself the way I did with David. I'm not David. Marco's voice was firm but gentle. I'm not going to diminish you or make you feel small. But I also can't make you trust me, Claire. That has to come from you. How do I do that? How do I trust again after everything? One day at a time, one choice at a time, and by letting me prove I'm worth the risk. Marco glanced up at the treehouse where Lily was absorbed in a book. I'm not going anywhere. Whether you trust me today or a year from now, I'll still be here, because she's worth it, and so are you. The words settled over Claire like a promise, and she found herself believing them despite her fears. That night, after Lily was asleep in her new bedroom, Claire and Marco sat in the kitchen with glasses of wine and 5 years of unspoken history between them. Tell me about those years, Claire said. What you did. Who you became. Marco swirled his wine thoughtfully. I consolidated power, eliminated threats, built legitimate businesses to balance the less legitimate ones. Tried to become someone my mother would have been proud of instead of someone my father was. Did you succeed? I'd like to think so. I'm not running drugs or trafficking people. I don't prey on the weak. Most of what I do now is protection, making sure neighborhoods stay safe, that businesses can operate without interference, that people like Petrov don't run unchecked. That's still criminal. It's gray, but it keeps more people alive than the alternative would. Marco met her eyes. I'm not asking you to approve of everything I do, just to understand that I'm trying to do better than the men who came before me. Claire considered this. What about Lily? As she gets older, as she starts to understand what you do, how do we protect her from that? We teach her that the world isn't black and white, that people are complicated and choices are hard, and sometimes doing the right thing means operating outside the law. Marco's jaw tightened. I won't lie to her about who I am, but I'll make damn sure she knows she's loved and protected and free to choose her own path, whatever that looks like. And us? What are we to each other besides Lily's parents? The question had been building for days, hanging unspoken through every shared meal and bedtime routine. Marco set down his wine glass with careful precision. That depends on what you want. I can be Lily's father, and nothing more. Separate houses, coordinated custody, the whole co-parenting arrangement. He paused. Or we can try to build something together, not because we have to, but because we want to. Claire's pulse quickened. What does that look like? Honestly? I don't know. I've never done this before. The family thing, the partnership thing. I've spent 20 years being alone, being careful, not letting anyone get too close. Marco's smile was self-deprecating. Then you walked into my life twice, and both times you changed everything.
So I'm asking if you'd be willing to try building something with me. Slowly, carefully, with no pressure or expectations, just seeing what we could become if we're brave enough. The offer terrified and tempted her in equal measure. Claire thought about the way Marco looked at Lily, the gentle patience he showed, the careful respect he gave Claire's boundaries. Thought about the years she'd spent alone, proving she didn't need anyone, while longing secretly for exactly this, someone to share the burdens, to stand beside her, to choose her every day.
I'm broken, she said quietly. David broke something in me, and I don't know if it can be fixed. I'm broken too. We can be broken together and maybe help each other heal, or we can be broken separately and keep wondering what might have been if we'd tried. Marco reached across the table, his hand open in invitation. I'm willing to try if you are. Claire looked at his hand, at the simple offer of partnership it represented. Thought about Lily sleeping upstairs in a house that felt like home, about the life they could build together if she was brave enough to reach for it. She placed her hand in his, feeling his fingers close around hers with gentle certainty. Okay, she whispered. Let's try. The weeks that followed were a study in careful rebuilding. Claire officially reclaimed her identity as Claire Carter, sitting through police interviews that were mostly perfunctory. They'd known for years she hadn't killed David, but procedure required following up now that she'd resurfaced. Marco's lawyer sat beside her through every meeting, and the case was officially closed within a week. She took the bookstore job after visiting 3 other options, choosing it not because Marco had arranged it, but because she genuinely loved the space and the owner's vision for the store. It felt like her choice, which made all the difference. Lily started at her new school and thrived, making friends easily and bringing home artwork that Marco immediately framed and hung throughout the house. Her health continued improving, blood counts climbing toward normal, energy returning to her small body. And Claire and Marco learned each other slowly. He took her to dinner at small restaurants where they could talk without interruption, learning her preferences and telling stories from the years they'd been apart. She came to his apartment sometimes after Lily was asleep, sitting on his balcony with wine while he worked through business calls, comfortable in the silence between them. He never pushed for more than she was ready to give, never demanded declarations or commitments, just showed up, day after day, proving through consistency what words couldn't convey. Until the night Claire showed up at his door at 11 o'clock, still dressed from the bookstore, her eyes bright with something that looked like decision. I want to try, she said when he opened the door. Really try. Not just co-parenting or casual dating, but actually building something together. I'm scared and I don't know if I'll be any good at this, but I want to try. Marco pulled her inside, closing the door behind her. What changed? I realized I've been so focused on not making the same mistakes I made with David that I was making a different mistake, holding back from something good, because I was afraid of getting hurt again. Claire moved closer to him, close enough to feel his warmth. You're not David. You've proven that 100 times over, and I'm tired of letting fear make my choices. Claire, his voice was rough with emotion. I'm not asking for promises or guarantees. I just want to stop pretending that what's happening between us is only about Lily. It's about us too, about what we could become if we're honest about wanting each other. Marco's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with reverent gentleness. I've wanted you since the moment I pulled you into that doorway 5 years ago. I've spent all this time trying to be patient, to give you space, to prove I'm worth the risk. But Claire, if you're asking what I want everything. You, Lily, a life we build together, all of it. Then take it, Claire whispered. Take me. Show me what it looks like when someone chooses me because they want to, not because they have to. Marco kissed her then, deep and slow and full of 5 years of longing. Claire melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, and felt something inside her chest finally unlock. This was what she'd been afraid of, this overwhelming feeling of safety and desire tangled together, the terrifying vulnerability of letting someone in completely. But Marco held her like she was precious, kissed her like she was worth everything, and Claire let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. They moved to his bedroom slowly, between kisses and quiet words, and when they came together, it felt like coming home. Marco was patient and thorough and devastating, taking her apart with careful precision and putting her back together better than before.
And afterward, lying tangled in his sheets with his arms around her, Claire felt more herself than she had in years. "Stay," Marco said against her hair. "Tonight and every night after. Move in with me, you and Lily. Let me wake up with you every morning and come home to you every night. Let me build the life I should have offered you 5 years ago." Claire thought about the house in Lincoln Park, beautiful, but still somehow separate. Thought about this apartment, about Marco's space becoming their space, about Lily having both parents under one roof. What about Lily? We should probably ease her into this, not just spring it on her that we're together now. Lily's known for weeks that something was happening between us. Kids notice everything. Marco's smile was gentle against her temple. But we'll tell her together, explain that we care about each other and want to try being a family. If she needs time to adjust, we take it slow. But Claire, I'm done pretending that what I feel for you is casual. I love you. I've probably loved you since that first night. And I want you to stay. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they felt like permission to want what she'd been afraid to claim. "I love you too," she admitted, the word strange and right on her tongue. "I didn't want to, didn't trust it, but I do. I love you, Marco." He kissed her again, slow and sweet, and Claire surrendered to the truth that sometimes the scariest choice was also the right one. They told Lily the next morning over pancakes, explaining gently that they cared about each other and wanted to live together as a family. Lily looked between them with those serious dark eyes, considering. "Does this mean Marco's not just my dad? He's also your boyfriend?" she asked Claire. "Something like that," Claire agreed. "And we'd all live here together? If that's okay with you." Lily thought about this, then nodded firmly. "Okay, but I get to decorate my room how I want, with dinosaurs." Marco laughed, the sound full of relief and joy. "As many dinosaurs as you want, princess. It's a deal." And just like that, they became a family. Not perfect, not without complications, but real and honest and built on choices instead of obligations. Claire moved into Marco's apartment that week, transforming it from a bachelor's space into a home. Lily's dinosaurs colonized every surface. Claire's books filled the empty shelves, and slowly, carefully, they built something that felt like forever. 3 months into their new life together, Claire woke to find Marco's side of the bed empty. She found him in his office at 2 a.m, staring at his laptop with an expression that made her stomach drop. "What's wrong?" she asked from the doorway. Marco looked up, and the weight in his eyes told her everything before he spoke. "Vincent just called. There's a problem with one of my shipments, the kind of problem that could bring federal attention if it's not handled carefully." Claire moved into the room, closing the door behind her. They'd had this conversation before, about the parts of Marco's business that existed in shadows, about the risks that came with loving a man who operated outside the law. But knowing abstractly was different from facing it at 2 a.m. with fear in his eyes. "How bad?" she asked. "Bad enough that I need to go handle it personally, tonight." Marco stood, already reaching for his phone. "Vincent's sending a car. I'll have extra security posted here, but Claire, we'll be fine. Go do what you need to do. If this goes wrong, if the feds get involved, there could be consequences. For me, for my businesses, for—" He stopped, jaw tight. "For you and Lily. Association alone could bring scrutiny you don't need." Claire understood what he was offering, an out. A chance to step back before things got complicated, to protect herself and Lily from the fallout of his choices. 6 months ago, she might have taken it. But 6 months ago, she'd been running from everything instead of choosing what she wanted. "We're not going anywhere," she said firmly. "Whatever happens, we face it together. That's what family means." Relief flickered across Marco's expression before he pulled her close, pressing his face into her hair. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway." Claire pulled back to meet his eyes. "Go. Handle it. Come home safe." He kissed her hard and desperate, then left without looking back. Claire stood in the empty office and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Instead, she checked on Lily, sleeping peacefully surrounded by stuffed dinosaurs, then made coffee and waited. Vincent called at dawn. "It's contained," he said without preamble. "Marco's handling the last details. He'll be home in a few hours." "Was anyone hurt?" A pause. No one who didn't deserve it. The situation's resolved, Ms. Carter. Your family's safe. The call ended, and Claire sat with her cooling coffee, processing Vincent's careful words. Someone had deserved to be hurt. Marco had made that call, had done whatever necessary to protect what was his. And Claire found she couldn't even summon horror at the implications. Only relief that he was safe, that they were all safe. Maybe that made her complicit. Maybe loving Marco meant accepting parts of him that existed in moral gray areas. But she'd spent 5 years trying to build a life from sanitized pieces, and it had been hollow. This messy, complicated truth felt more real than anything she'd had before. Marco came home as the sun was fully up, looking exhausted but unharmed. Lily was still asleep, and Claire met him in the kitchen with coffee and questions she didn't ask. He pulled her into his arms and just held her for long minutes, and she understood that whatever had happened in the dark hours of morning, it had cost him something. "It's over?" she asked quietly. "It's over. The problem's eliminated, and the feds won't find anything worth investigating." Marco's voice was rough with fatigue. "I'm sorry. I know this isn't the life you signed up for. I signed up for you, all of you, including the parts that scare me." Claire pulled back to look at him. "But Marco, I need to know, are we safe? Really safe? Or is this going to keep happening?" He was quiet for a long moment, and Claire saw him wrestling with honesty. "I'm working on transitioning fully legitimate. Most of my operations already are, but there are still pieces that exist in gray areas, relationships that can't be severed cleanly without creating more problems than they solve. It'll take time." "How much time?" "A year, maybe 2. I'm building exit strategies, but they have to be careful. People in my position don't just retire, they have to be smart about it." Marco's hand came up to cup her face. "I'm trying, Claire. I'm trying to become someone who doesn't keep you up at night worrying. But I need you to be patient with me." Claire thought about what that meant. 2 more years of nights like this, of wondering if he'd come home safe, of raising Lily in the shadow of his complicated world. It should have been too much to ask. Maybe it was. But when she looked at Marco, exhausted and honest and trying so hard to be better, she couldn't walk away. 2 years, she said. "But Marco, at the end of that, I need you to be done, completely done. Because Lily's getting older, and she's going to start asking questions, and I need to be able to tell her that her father made different choices. Can you do that?" "Yes." No hesitation, no hedging. 2 years, and I'm out. I promise. It was a promise that would reshape his entire life, Claire knew, but he offered it without flinching, and she believed he meant it. The months that followed tested that promise in ways neither of them anticipated. Marco threw himself into legitimizing his businesses with single-minded focus, selling off questionable operations and investing in clean ventures. It meant long hours and difficult negotiations, and occasionally dangerous confrontations with people who didn't want him to leave. Claire watched him transform through sheer determination, becoming the man he'd promised to be. And she supported him however she could, managing the household, raising Lily, being the steady presence he came home to when everything else was chaos. But it wasn't all darkness and danger. There were good moments too, ordinary moments that felt precious because they'd been so hard won. Marco teaching Lily to ride a bike in the park, his patience infinite as she wobbled and fell and tried again. Sunday morning pancakes where they all worked together, Lily cracking eggs with fierce concentration while Claire mixed batter and Marco told terrible jokes. Family movie nights where they piled on the couch with popcorn and argued good-naturedly about whether dinosaur documentaries counted as entertainment. Claire fell deeper in love with him during those moments, watching him be gentle with their daughter, watching him choose family over business again and again. This was who Marco De Luca really was beneath the dangerous reputation, a man trying desperately to be worthy of the people he loved. Lily thrived too. Her health continued improving until Dr. Singh officially declared her in full remission, her bone marrow producing healthy blood cells with no sign of the disorder returning. She shot up 3 inches in 6 months, all gangly limbs and boundless energy. Her curiosity was insatiable. She wanted to know everything about everything, from why the sky was blue to how Marco's businesses worked to whether Claire would ever marry her father. That last question came out of nowhere one evening while Claire was tucking her into bed. Maddie's parents are married, Lily announced, referring to her best friend from school. Are you and Marco going to get married? Claire's hand stilled on the blanket. Would you want us to? Lily considered this with her characteristic seriousness. I think so. Maddie says married means you promise to stay together forever, and I want us to stay together forever. We're already a family, baby, with or without marriage. That doesn't change how much we love you or each other. But marriage makes it official, like everyone knows you're choosing each other. Lily looked up at her with David's eyes and Claire's determination. I think you should choose each other officially. Claire kissed her forehead, avoiding the larger question. We'll see. Now sleep. You have school tomorrow. But the conversation stayed with her, and she found herself thinking about it more than she expected. She and Marco had built something real, something lasting. They shared a home and a daughter and a future. But they'd never discussed marriage, never made that formal commitment. Did it matter? They were already functioning as a married couple in every way that counted. But Lily's words echoed. Marriage makes it official, makes it a choice everyone can see. Marco found her on the balcony an hour later, staring out at Chicago's nighttime skyline. Lily asked if we're getting married, Claire said without preamble. Marco was quiet for a moment. What did you tell her? That we're already a family, that marriage doesn't change how much we love her. Claire turned to face him. But she's right, isn't she? Marriage does mean something. It's a choice made public, a promise witnessed. Are you asking me to marry you, Claire Carter? The question, delivered with gentle humor, made her smile despite her nerves. I'm asking what you think about it, about us making that kind of promise. Marco moved closer, taking her hands in his. I think I've been waiting for you to be ready for that promise since the day you moved in. I think I'd marry you tomorrow if you'd let me. But I also think you've been married before to someone who broke every promise he made, and I don't want you to say yes to me until you're absolutely certain I won't do the same. I am certain. The words came easily, true in a way she'd never been able to achieve with David. You've proven yourself 100 times over, Marco. You've kept every promise you've made to me and Lily. You've changed your entire life to be the person we need. I trust you completely. Then marry me. Marco pulled a small box from his pocket, and Claire's breath caught. I've been carrying this for 2 months, waiting for the right moment. But Claire, there's never going to be a perfect moment, and I'm tired of waiting to make you mine in every way that matters. He opened the box to reveal a ring, simple, elegant, with a single diamond that caught the city lights. Nothing ostentatious, nothing that screamed wealth. Just beautiful and honest, like everything Marco had given her. Claire Elizabeth Carter, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you and Lily? Will you give me the honor of being your husband and her father officially, legally, permanently? Claire looked at the ring, at Marco's face earnest and hopeful in the dim light, at the life they'd built together from broken pieces. Thought about the scared woman she'd been 5 years ago, running from danger and betrayal. Thought about the woman she'd become, stronger, braver, willing to choose love even when it was complicated. Yes, she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Yes, I'll marry you. Marco slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her close, kissing her with a thoroughness that made her forget they were on a balcony where neighbors could see. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. I'm going to make you so happy, he promised. I'm going to spend every day making sure you never regret this. I already don't regret it. I haven't regretted it since the day I decided to trust you with Lily's life. Claire kissed him again, softer this time. Now, let's go tell our daughter before she bursts from curiosity. Lily screamed with joy when they told her, launching herself at both of them with enough force to nearly knock them over. She insisted on calling Maddie immediately to report the news, her excitement infectious. They planned a small wedding for spring, just close friends and the family that mattered. Jessica reached out when she heard, asking cautiously if she could attend, and Claire surprised herself by saying yes. Her sister would never be her confidant again, would never hold the place she'd once occupied. But she was still family, still trying to make amends, and Claire found she had enough grace now to allow that. The wedding was simple and perfect, held in the garden of their Lincoln Park house under flowering cherry trees. Lily served as flower girl and ring bearer both, taking her duties with utmost seriousness. Vincent stood as Marco's best man, his normally stoic expression showing rare emotion. And when Marco and Claire exchanged vows they'd written themselves, there wasn't a dry eye among the small gathering. "I promise to choose you every day," Claire said, her voice steady despite her tears. "To trust you with my fears and my hopes. To build a life with you that's honest and real, even when it's hard. I promise to love you not in spite of your complications, but because of all of you, the darkness and the light, the past and the future you're building. You saved my life twice. Now I'm choosing to spend the rest of it with you." Marco's vows were equally raw. "I promise to protect you and Lily with everything I am. To be worthy of the trust you've placed in me. To become the man you deserve, every single day. You walked into my life when I'd forgotten how to be anything but dangerous, and you reminded me I could be good. I promise to keep choosing good, to keep choosing you, to keep building the family we both deserve. I love you, Claire. I'll love you until my last breath." When the officiant pronounced them married, Marco kissed her like they were the only two people in the world, and Claire felt the last piece of her broken heart finally heal. The reception was small and joyful, full of laughter and dancing, and Lily running wild with the few children in attendance. Marco's business associates mixed with Claire's bookstore colleagues, and somehow the combination worked. This was their life now, complicated and blended and perfect in its imperfection. Late in the evening, Claire found Jessica standing alone near the garden's edge, watching the celebration with an expression of bittersweet longing. "Thank you for coming," Claire said quietly. Jessica turned, surprise flickering across her face. "Thank you for letting me. I know I don't deserve to be here." "Maybe not, but you're still my sister, and I'm trying to believe people can change. That mistakes don't have to define us forever." Claire glanced back at Marco, who was dancing with Lily on his feet, both of them laughing. "He changed. I changed. Maybe you have too. I'm trying. I've been in therapy, working on understanding why I made the choices I did, why I hurt you." Jessica's voice was thick with emotion. "I can't take it back, can't undo the damage, but I'm trying to be better." "That's all any of us can do." Claire surprised herself by reaching out, squeezing her sister's hand briefly. "I'm not ready to be close again, but I'm willing to let you try to earn back my trust. Slowly." Jessica nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Slowly. I can do slowly. Thank you, Claire." After Jessica left, Claire rejoined her husband. The word still strange and wonderful on her tongue, and let him pull her into a dance. Lily had finally worn herself out and was asleep on Vincent's shoulder, the stoic security chief looking vaguely panicked at the responsibility of holding a sleeping child. "Happy?" Marco asked against her ear. "Deliriously." Claire looked up at him, at this man who'd saved her and loved her and chosen her every single day. "Although I have some news that might make you even happier." Something in her tone made Marco pull back, studying her face. "What kind of news?" "The kind that involves tiny clothes and sleepless nights, and Lily becoming a big sister in about 7 months. Marco's expression went through a rapid series of changes: shock, joy, wonder, and finally pure elation. "You're pregnant?" "Found out last week. I wanted to wait until after the wedding to tell you, make today about us. But yes, we're having a baby." Marco lifted her off her feet, spinning her around while Claire laughed and demanded he put her down before he made her dizzy. When he finally did, he kissed her with such tenderness it made her chest ache. "I love you," he said. "Both of you. All of you. Our whole complicated, beautiful family. I love you too. Even though you're about to find out what it's like to have a newborn and a 6-year-old simultaneously. Bring it on. I'm ready for anything as long as I have you." The months that followed were a blur of preparations and transformations. Marco finished the last of his business transitions, officially retiring from anything that existed in moral gray areas. He kept the restaurants, the real estate holdings, the import business that dealt exclusively in legal goods. Everything else was sold or shut down, and he walked away from that life without looking back. Claire watched him become fully legitimate with pride and relief. This was the man she'd needed him to be. the father Lily and their unborn child deserved. He'd kept his promise, had changed his entire world to build the life they'd committed to together. Lily was thrilled about the prospect of a sibling, though her enthusiasm was tempered by serious concerns about whether the baby would like dinosaurs as much as she did. Marco assured her solemnly that he would make sure the baby received proper dinosaur education, and Lily seemed satisfied with this plan. The pregnancy was easier than Claire's first had been, probably because she wasn't running from danger or hiding her identity or trying to survive alone. She had Marco beside her for every appointment, every milestone, every moment of fear or joy. He read parenting books with the same focus he'd once applied to business strategy, determined to be the best father possible. Their son was born on a snowy January morning, 6 pounds of perfect health and impressive lungs. They named him James Marco DeLuca, and Lily immediately nicknamed him JJ and appointed herself his personal protector. Watching Marco hold his son for the first time, tears streaming down his face while he whispered promises about the future, Claire felt everything come full circle. This family they'd built from broken pieces, this life they'd chosen despite every reason to run, it was real and lasting and worth every risk they'd taken. 6 months after JJ's birth, Marco surprised Claire with one final gesture. He'd purchased the building where her bookstore operated and renovated the upstairs apartment into a reading space and community center. "It's yours," he said, handing her the keys. "The whole building. The bookstore stays, obviously, but the upstairs is whatever you want it to be. A place for kids' reading programs, writing workshops, whatever your heart desires. Consider it a very late wedding present." Claire stood in the empty space, imagining the possibilities. A place to build community, to share her love of books, to create something lasting that was entirely hers. "Marco, this is too much. It's not nearly enough. You gave me a family, Claire. You gave me purpose and love and reasons to be better. This is just a building." He pulled her close, careful of JJ sleeping against her chest in his carrier. "Although if you'd rather have something else, I can—" "No, this is perfect, absolutely perfect." Claire kissed him, pouring 5 years of gratitude and love into the gesture. "Thank you for this, for everything, for being exactly who you promised to be. Always. That's what we promise each other now. Always." They built the community center together over the following months, with Lily's input heavily featured in the children's section design. It opened in the spring, becoming a hub for neighborhood families and establishing Claire as more than Emma Ross or Claire Carter or even Marco DeLuca's wife. She was herself, fully and completely, building something meaningful from her own passions. Marco settled fully into legitimate business, his reputation slowly shifting from dangerous to simply powerful. He served on charity boards, invested in neighborhood revitalization, and became known as someone who protected rather than threatened. The past didn't disappear. People still knew who he'd been, but it became history rather than present danger. Lily grew into a brilliant, curious child who excelled at science and never met a dinosaur fact she didn't immediately memorize. JJ grew into a happy toddler who worshipped his big sister and followed her everywhere. And Claire and Marco grew into the kind of partnership that came from choosing each other through difficulties rather than in spite of them. 5 years after their wedding, Claire found herself back on the balcony where Marco had proposed, watching Chicago's light shimmer against the night sky. Marco joined her, sliding an arm around her waist and pulling her close. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How far we've come. How different everything is from that night you pulled me into a doorway and changed my entire life." Claire leaned into his warmth. "I was so broken then, so scared. I couldn't imagine ever feeling safe again, let alone happy. And now? Now I'm married to my best friend, raising 2 incredible kids, running a community center I love. Now I wake up every morning grateful for the life we've built." She turned in his arms to face him. "You kept every promise you made, Marco. You became exactly who you said you'd be. We became who we were supposed to be together." Marco kissed her forehead. "I'm not the same man I was before you, Claire. You made me better. Made me want to be better. We made each other better. That's what love does. It transforms us into who we're meant to be." From inside, they heard Lily calling that JJ had knocked over his block tower again and was crying. Marco sighed affectionately. "Duty calls. Think we should intervene before she builds him a fortress to prevent future collapses? Claire laughed. Probably. Although, knowing our daughter, the fortress would be dinosaur-themed and actually structurally sound. They went inside together, leaving the balcony and the past behind them. The future spread out ahead, uncertain in its details but solid in its foundation. They would face it together. This family built from second chances and hard-won trust. This love that had survived betrayal and danger and 5 years of separation to become something unshakable. Claire Carter DeLuca had been broken once, shattered by betrayal and loss. But she'd been remade through courage and choice, through learning to trust again, through accepting that love didn't always look the way she'd expected. Marco had offered her protection, and she'd found partnership. He'd offered her safety, and she'd found home. And standing in their living room, watching Marco carefully rebuild JJ's blocks while Lily supervised with the authority of a construction foreman, Claire understood that this was the real victory. Not survival, though they'd certainly survived. Not even happiness, though she was happier than she'd ever imagined possible. The victory was this: she'd learned to choose love even when it was complicated, to trust even after betrayal, to build a future even when the past tried to destroy her. She'd learned that strength wasn't about doing everything alone. It was about knowing when to accept help, when to lean on others, when to let love in despite the risk. Marco caught her watching and smiled, that private smile reserved just for her. Claire smiled back, holding his gaze across their chaotic, beautiful living room. She'd signed divorce papers once, torn up a pregnancy test, and walked away from everything she'd known. That choice had led her here, to this moment, to this family, to this love that had saved her in every way that mattered. And she would choose it all again. The fear, and the risk, and the leap of faith. Because on the other side was everything she'd never known she needed. A partner who chose her daily, children who filled her life with purpose, a future built on truth instead of lies. Claire had spent 5 years hiding, but she was done hiding now. She was exactly where she was meant to be, with exactly who she was meant to be with, living the life she'd been brave enough to choose. And that, finally and completely, was enough.